Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the show that takes a whole stack of sources, pulls out the crucial bits, and basically gives you a shortcut to really knowing your stuff. Today, we're diving into something that, honestly, it feels a bit like discovering the secret rules for how people interact. Like, imagine if every chat, every argument, every awkward silence was actually some kind of play. With hidden scripts, secret payoffs. Well, that's pretty much what Eric Berne, the brilliant mind behind transactional analysis, well, that's what he uncovered in his big work, Games People Play.
Oh, it's absolutely a game changer, that book. I mean, lots of us have maybe heard terms like ego states or strokes thrown around, but Bernays' original ideas, they go so much deeper. They really pull back the curtain on these unconscious patterns that, run our relationships.
Right. So our mission here in this deep dive is to unpack Bernays' key ideas. We want to reveal those hidden rules so you can start spotting these, well, sometimes surprising patterns in your own life, your own relationships. And look, this isn't about blaming anyone or pointing fingers. It's really about gaining awareness and ultimately getting more choice in how you live and connect with people. So you ready to dive into the human playbook?
Absolutely. Let's jump in. Maybe we start with what Berne called the basic currency, really, of how we interact.
Yeah.
Strokes. He saw that humans have this thing he called stimulus hunger and also recognition hunger. And this isn't just like a nice phrase. It's a deep biological need we have for contact, for being acknowledged.
A biological need. That sounds pretty intense for something called a stroke. What did he really mean by that?
Well, it's intense because it's fundamentally about survival. Think about the research by Rene Spitz. He found that infants who were deprived of physical handling of touch, they could actually decline profoundly, sometimes irreversibly. And even in adults, sensory deprivation experiments, they can trigger things like transient psychosis. So these studies really underscore how vital that regular contact and recognition is for our mental and physical health.
Okay, wow. So a stroke is basically any sign of recognition. Berne had that great line, didn't he? If you're not stroked, your spinal cord will shrivel up. So that really drives it home. But I'm wondering, does it matter if the recognition is good or bad? Like, positive or negative?
Yeah, that's a really key question. There were experiments with rats by S. Levine that actually showed that even painful electric shocks worked as effective strokes. It suggests that maybe any recognition is better than none at all. It taps into this really deep, almost primal hunger inside us, this need to be seen, to have our existence confirmed by others.
That's kind of startling. Okay, so we have this fundamental need for strokes. How do we actually get them? Berne found it often depends on which part of us is active in an interaction, what he called our ego states. And this is where it gets really interesting, I think. He pinpointed three: parent, adult, and child. And he was really clear, wasn't he, that these aren't just like hypothetical ideas like Freud's id, ego, superego. These are things you can actually see, observable psychological realities. We all have them. We all shift between them.
Exactly. Think of them as distinct modes of being. Each one has its own set of thoughts, feelings, behaviors. So the parent ego state, that's our internalized version of how our own parents or, other important figures thought, felt, acted. It's where our rules come from, our nurturing side, our judgments too. It helps us parent our own kids, and it makes a lot of our responses automatic, which saves mental energy, like, automatically cleaning up a mess, because that's just what you do.
Right. Got it. Then you've got the adult ego state. This is the objective bit, the part focused on facts, on the here and now, like the computer in our head, sort of processing info, making rational calls, and ideally kind of regulating the parent and child, keeping them, balanced and appropriate.
Perfectly put. And then finally, the child ego state. This holds all the old echoes of our childhood feelings and behaviors. Berne made a distinction, didn't he, between the natural child, spontaneous, curious, playful, the source of charm and creativity, and the adapted child. That's the part that sort of modified its behavior because of how parents reacted. It might become compliant or maybe rebellious or withdrawn. But the child ego state, it brings so much value, joy, pleasure, genuine wonder.
So it's not like one is good and the others are bad.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Berne really emphasized that all three ego states have high survival and living value. They all deserve equal respect, a legitimate place when they're in a healthy balance. The aim isn't to ditch any of them, but to operate from the one that's most fitting for whatever situation you're in.
Okay. So we understand ego states, we need strokes. Then Berne points out another basic human issue: structure hunger. This need we have to structure our time, our waking hours, basically to avoid being bored, which apparently Kierkegaard thought could lead to emotional starvation.
Yeah.
So how do we fill the time?
Yeah, it's fascinating how he laid it out. Berne mapped this kind of hierarchy of how we structure time to satisfy that hunger. At the most basic level, you've got activities. This is essentially goal-focused work or problem-solving, things driven by external reality, like, say, building a boat or cooking dinner. They provide a kind of framework for exchanging strokes while you're doing something.
And within those activities, he mentioned procedures.
Right. Procedures are like stereotyped steps, often programmed by the adult ego state, for handling reality.
Yeah.
Following a recipe, flying a plane, performing surgery. They're about efficiency, mostly, how well you do the task.
Okay, makes sense.
Then, moving up in social complexity, we hit rituals. These are the socially programmed, often parent-patterned, stereotyped exchanges. Our everyday greetings are a perfect example. Think about saying hello. There's an unwritten script, isn't there? A ritual for how many pleasantries are owed. If you just give a quick hi to someone you haven't seen for ages, they might feel a bit, slighted.
Oh, totally. It's like we're unconsciously keeping score of these little bits of recognition.
Exactly.
And if you give too many strokes when just a nod was expected, that feels weird too. Like a miscalculation in the social energy exchange.
Precisely. Then, after rituals, we have pastimes. These are sort of semi-ritualistic chats, complementary transactions, usually around a single theme. You see them all the time at parties or gatherings. Berne had those funny labels like man talk about sports or cars, and lady talk about, well, whatever the stereotype was then. The specific topics might change, but we all recognize those kinds of conversations, right? They help us sort of size each other up, figure out who we might click with, and, confirm our roles in the group.
All teenagers are trouble these days, or aren't politicians terrible, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Confirming roles.
And that leads us, finally, to the absolute core of this deep dive, games. Berne's definition is a bit dense, an ongoing series of complementary ulterior transactions progressing to a well-defined, predictable outcome. Okay, unpack that.
Right, it's a mouthful. But the key bits are crucial. There's always a superficial reason for the interaction, something plausible on the surface. But underneath, there's a concealed motivation. There's usually a snare, or what he called a gimmick, some kind of vulnerability or hook. And critically, there's a payoff, usually a specific feeling at the end.
And he stressed that games are basically dishonest.
Yes. And they have a dramatic outcome, not just like an exciting one. And importantly, they're not always fun. Not at all. They can be incredibly serious, even fatal, like in the game Berne called Alcoholic.
So definitely not like playing Monopoly for laughs. It's more subtle, often unconscious manipulation. How did Berne actually break down the mechanics, the steps of a game?
He had this formula. C, which stands for con, plus G, gimmick, ER, response, nake. Then X, the switch, meet, leading to P, the payoff. It helps to think of it almost like a stage magic trick.
Okay.
The con sets up a subtle illusion, maybe sends a hidden message. The other person, the gimmick, has some kind of vulnerability or hook that makes them respond to that hidden message.
Yeah.
Then, quick as a flash, there's an unexpected turn that's the switch, and boom, someone, usually the initiator, is left with a specific feeling, often a negative one. That's the payoff. Bob and Mary Golding, who also worked in TA, they put it a bit more simply maybe. Person A sends an overt message, but also a hidden psychological one. Person B responds to the hidden message. Then person A suddenly switches ego states, maybe gets angry or hurt, and experiences that surprise bad feeling, the payoff. Games often get their names from how the initiator feels right at the end.
Okay, yeah. The magic trick analogy helps. Let's make this concrete, though, with some specific games. This is where it really clicks, I find. A real classic, and it's pretty intense, is Now I've Got You, You Son of a Bitch, or Niji Sop, often played alongside Kick Me.
Right, the famous example is about a little boy, Johnny, maybe 5 years old, and his mother. Johnny's playing, pulls his toy truck, knocks over a vase, it shatters. His mother comes in and asks, who did that? Now, on the surface, that sounds like an adult question, just looking for information.
Yeah, seems reasonable.
But Berne saw psychological level. It was an invitation for Johnny to lie. And he does. He says, doggy, even though the dog was outside at the time.
The setup and the mother's reaction.
Her neck gets red. She switches instantly from that seemingly reasonable adult state to this righteous, angry parent. She hits him, declares, I will not have a child who lies. Her payoff. That sudden rush of justified anger, that indignation, it's almost like a perverse satisfaction. She wasn't consciously planning to trap him, but the whole dynamic ensured that outcome.
And Johnny, by lying and basically setting himself up to be punished.
He was playing Kick Me. That's fascinating, isn't it? In Niji Isab, one person uses their parent and adult states. The other uses their child state. Together, it's like they activate all three, making one complete psychological person for that moment. And Johnny's mother, well, she discounted reality, didn't she? Ignored that the dog was outside, maybe ignored that she hadn't really childproofed the room.
Wow. Okay, from that kind of subtle trap in Naiju Sob, we can see how even quick exchanges have these deep hidden layers. But what about relationships where blame feels like a constant thing, like a suffocating cloud that often seems to be where Berne saw if it weren't for you or IWFY being played?
Yeah, that's a really common one, especially in marriages, he observed. Someone might maybe unconsciously pick a partner who's quite dominant or restrictive. This partner then protects them from situations outside the home that they actually find frightening. But then they use that very restriction as fuel to complain. If it weren't for you, I could be out dancing or whatever it is.
So it's working on two levels.
Exactly. Socially, it looks like parent-child. One restricts, the other complains. But psychologically, it's often child-child. She gets to avoid situations she secretly fears, and maybe he avoids dealing with his own anxieties about her independence or leaving.
And it has that external social advantage too, right? It easily slips into a pastime with friends. Like, if it weren't for him over coffee. Confirms their role.
Absolutely. A perfect setup for complaining and getting sympathy strokes.
Okay, here's one I think absolutely everyone has encountered, maybe played, especially at parties. Why don't you? Yes, but. Why do I be? Someone presents a problem, sounding helpless, and then a whole bunch of advisors jump in with solutions, all starting, why don't you?
And the person who presented the problem, the helpless one, systematically shoots down every single suggestion with a yes, but. The win for them, the payoff, is when all the advisors finally fall silent, frustrated, and maybe a bit deflated. And the thing is, often the person playing yes, but is just as smart as the advisors. They've likely already thought of or even tried everything being suggested.
So what's the real point then?
It's usually not about getting solutions. The game's aim is often reassurance, connection, maybe proving that their problem is uniquely difficult, or perhaps subtly showing up the advisors. It's about the interaction itself.
God, I can picture that so clearly. Been on both sides of that one, I'm sure. It's almost painfully predictable once you see the pattern.
It really is. Very common.
All right, let's shift to one that seems kind of simple on the surface, but has a surprisingly deep psychological payoff. Schlemiel. Can you paint that picture?
Right. Schlemiel is the person who's always making a mess. Spills the drink on the host's carpet, drops food, burns the table with a cigarette, causes some kind of minor damage, and then immediately they launch into these profuse, maybe over-the-top apologies. Oh, I'm so sorry, how clumsy of me.
And the payoff isn't just enjoying making a mess.
No, the destructiveness is just a bonus, really. According to Berne, the real payoff for the Schlemiel is getting forgiveness from the person whose stuff they messed up. The victim feels almost obligated to forgive after such a quick, profuse apology, and the victim in turn gets to feel magnanimous, showing off their self-control.
So it's like a forced transaction of apology and forgiveness. Huh. Okay, now moving to something much heavier. Berne famously analyzed alcoholic, not just as, say, a disease or addiction in the purely medical sense, but as a complex, structured game. A five-handed game, he called it.
That's right. He identified specific roles that tend to show up. There's the alcoholic who initiates the game, obviously. Then there's often a persecutor, maybe the spouse who criticizes and blames. There's the rescuer, like a well-meaning doctor or friend who keeps trying to save them. There's the patsy or dummy, someone who enables the drinking, maybe gives money without asking questions, like an overly protective parent perhaps. And finally, the connection, the bartender, the liquor store clerk, the one who supplies the means.
And the drinking itself is just one move in this larger game.
Yes. The drinking is crucial, of course, but Berne suggested the true psychological payoff for the alcoholic role is often the hangover, the self-blame, the morning after misery, or setting things up so their inner child gets severely scolded by the persecutor. It fulfills a deeper script. He even talked about a dry alcoholic game, played without any actual drinking, but following the same pattern of crisis, rescue, persecution, and payoff.
That's a really powerful and maybe uncomfortable way to look at addiction dynamics, as a structured game with roles. And speaking of blame, what about See What You Made Me Do?
Swamindi.
Oh yeah, a classic blame-shifting game.
Yeah.
Picture someone deep in concentration, maybe typing or fixing something. An intruder, a partner, or a child asks a simple question or interrupts somehow. The person makes a mistake, a slip, and then they explode. See what you made me do?
When really?
Well, Berne suggests the person playing SWIMD is often secretly or unconsciously only too happy when it occurs, because that mistake gives them the perfect excuse, the lever, to eject the intruder, justify their anger, and get back to their task without feeling guilty about being antisocial. So it's a way to avoid taking responsibility for their own mistake or their own desire for solitude.
Exactly. And this game can even become like the foundation of a relationship pattern. Bray mentioned the swayam di ujamite, you got me into this, cycle in marriages, where things like bounced checks or unpaid bills become constant fuel for this blame game back and forth.
Okay, from relationship games, maybe we briefly touch on Rapo. Berne identified this as a sexual game, but stressed it wasn't really about sex itself.
Right. It describes a pattern, often initiated by a woman in Bernie's examples, but potentially played by anyone, where someone leads another person on flirtatiously, maybe into a compromising situation, and then abruptly rejects them, accuses them, or feigns indignation.
And it has degrees.
Yes, from a sort of mild flirtation, followed by a sharp kiss-off, to more serious rejections, indignation, all the way to really dangerous versions involving false accusations, legal trouble, even violence.
And the payoff isn't sexual pleasure.
No. The payoff for the person playing Rapo might be expressing hidden anger or hatred, projecting their own guilt onto the other person, or, very significantly, finding a way to avoid genuine emotional or sexual intimacy while still engaging in provocative behavior. It uses sex for a non-sexual, often hostile, payoff.
That's quite dark. Okay, switching gears a bit. Cops and robbers. This isn't just about crime.
Not necessarily about the loot, anyway. Berne observed that some criminals, the players, seem more interested in the thrill of the chase, the excitement of outsmarting the police, than in the actual material gain.
He connected it back to childhood.
Yeah, to hide and seek. Remember how sometimes the kid hiding gets almost disappointed if they aren't found? The payoff is being discovered, being caught. So for these player criminals, the game is the chase, and getting caught might even be part of the script's payoff. It's different from, say, straight professional criminals whose main goal is absolutely not getting caught.
Fascinating. Okay, one last one. Wooden leg. This sounds straightforward.
It kind of is. It's using a real disability or even just a perceived flaw or condition as an excuse to avoid responsibility or effort. The classic line being, well, what can you expect from a man with a wooden leg? Or, what do you expect from someone with my anxiety? Or what do you expect from a neurotic?
And how does the player benefit?
They benefit by getting others to feel sorry for them or helpless or exasperated. It effectively lets them off the hook, excuses inaction, and gains them a kind of special status or exemption.
It makes sense. Now, we've talked about a lot of negative-sounding games. It's important to say, though, not all games are destructive, are they? Berne did mention good games.
Absolutely. That's a crucial point. He definitely acknowledged good games, patterns of interaction that actually contribute positively to the well-being of others and the person playing. He gave examples like Cavalier, which he described as the art of giving really genuine, graceful compliments that make people feel good. Or Happy to Help, where people might constructively compete to assist others, gaining positive strokes and fostering goodwill. These games have positive, fulfilling payoffs, unlike the others we've discussed.
Okay, good. So why? Why do we play all these games, especially the negative ones? It seems like a lot of complex maneuvering for sometimes quite miserable payoffs. What's the underlying psychology?
Berne delved into some interesting areas here. He even touched on possible links between constitutional body types, endomorph, mesomorph, ectomorph, and certain mental tendencies, like tendencies towards soothing or mastering or getting away. It hints at some deep biological roots for our behavioral styles.
And you talked about glands too, right? Hormones?
Yeah, things like the thyroid, adrenals, sex glands, they obviously influence our energy levels. Adrenals pump us up for fight or flight. But crucially, Berne said it's the mind that decides the purpose of that energy. If we get that rush of adrenaline but can't fight or flee, that energy gets stored.
And what happens when that stored energy gets released later?
Well, this connects to the brain acting like an energy storage system. It holds on to feelings, memories, and ideally stops us from just reacting impulsively all the time. Berne used this great little story, the case of the $10 slap.
Ah, yeah, tell us that one.
Okay, so Mr. King had a frustrating day at his cannery office, gets really annoyed, but holds it in. He comes home, his little 3-year-old kid playfully tears up a dollar bill, and Mr. King just loses it, gives the kid a terrible slap.
And a psychiatrist, Dr. Treese, pointed out.
Yeah, Treese observed that Mr. King delivered $10 worth of slap for a $1 crime. The extra $9 worth of anger came straight from the stored-up frustration from the office. The feelings got bottled up at work and then discharged totally disproportionately onto the child at home.
And the kid feels that unfairness, right? That $9 worth of resentment because he's basically being scapegoated for the dad's bad day.
Exactly. It's a brilliant illustration that just being smart, storing knowledge, is totally different from managing stored feelings. Intelligence doesn't automatically mean good emotional regulation. As Berne put it, maybe a bit bluntly, we admire people for their intelligence, but we like them for the way they handle their feelings. It's a powerful point. Our past feelings aren't just history. They're actively shaping our current interactions unless we become aware.
That makes so much sense, connecting those unexpressed emotions to how we react later. And what about how we even see the world, our perception of reality?
This is another huge piece. Berne argued we don't act and feel based on reality itself, but based on our mental images of reality. And these internal pictures are, as he said, highly charged with feeling. And they are incredibly resistant to change. Think about mourning someone you've lost or even adjusting to losing a limb. It's exhausting mental work because you are literally having to rebuild your core mental image of the world and your place in it.
And these images aren't always accurate either, right? They can get romanticized, idealized over time. I know I've definitely done that with memories of places or people.
Oh, for sure. Berne used the example of Hector Meads, who idealized his old hometown, Olympia, while he was away fighting. But when he finally got back, he was deeply disappointed because the town had changed. And crucially, he had changed. His mental image didn't match reality anymore. So a lot of arguments, Berne suggested, aren't really about objective facts. They're often fierce defenses of these deeply held, emotionally charged mental images.
And underneath those images, there are unconscious beliefs shaping them.
Yes, things like a belief in our own immortality, maybe, or the irresistibility of our charms, or, and this is a weird one, the omnipotence of our thoughts and feelings.
Omnipotence of thoughts, like thinking something can make it happen. That sounds almost like magical thinking. Give an example.
Berne told the story of Wendell Meleager, his uncle, whom he secretly disliked and had often fantasized about getting rid of, died in an accident. And Wendell was absolutely plagued by guilt afterwards, as if his angry thoughts, his dreams of his uncle's death, had somehow actually caused the accident.
Wow.
It's that primitive part of the mind believing thoughts have power. Maybe like when you've been really annoyed with someone and something bad happens to them and you feel that tiny irrational pang of guilt, like, oh no, did my bad thoughts do that? That's a flicker of that omnipotence of thought.
Yeah, that's a chilling insight into how powerful our internal world can feel. So, okay, if so much of how we interact is caught up in playing these often unhelpful games, what's the alternative? What's beyond the games? What's the point of understanding all this?
Well, Berne proposed the games, for all their complexity, even their grimness sometimes, are ultimately just substitutes. They're poignant forms of play, he called them, that we use instead of seeking real intimacy. They do fill the time, they do get us strokes, but they never quite deliver deep satisfaction.
And the way out, the path beyond games, is what Berne termed autonomy. What does that actually involve?
Autonomy, for Berne, meant recovering or releasing three fundamental human capacities. The first is awareness. This is the ability to see, hear, feel the world directly, freshly, in your own way, not just how you were taught to perceive it. Like really seeing the birds with wonder, instead of just immediately labeling them jay or sparrow because your dad taught you the names. It's about being present, in the here and now, without all the filters from the past.
Okay, awareness. Then spontaneity.
Spontaneity is the freedom to choose how you respond, to choose and express feelings from your full range, parent feelings, adult feelings, child feelings, whichever is authentic and appropriate, rather than being compelled by an old game script. It's about genuine unscripted expression, not just reacting in a programmed way to get a payoff.
And finally, the ultimate goal, you could say, intimacy.
Yes, intimacy, for Berne, is that spontaneous, game-free openness and honesty of an aware person. It's the liberated, uncorrupted child living authentically in the present. He saw it as the only completely satisfying answer to those fundamental hungers we talked about for stimulus, recognition, structure. It's really a journey, though, not a destination. Constantly working to free yourself from those old scripts.
I remember when I first started really seeing these games in my own life after reading Berne. It was like, wow, a curtain lifted, both incredibly insightful and, yeah, a little uncomfortable at times. It sounds truly transformative then. Understanding games people play really shines a light on why we do the things we do, the unconscious roles we fall into. And like you said, it's not about being cynical. It's about seeing the hidden machinery, maybe, so you have the choice to step off the treadmill.
Absolutely. So maybe the challenge for you listening is to become a bit more of an observer. of your own interactions and those you see around you. Next time you feel that familiar knot of tension in a conversation, or you notice things heading towards a predictable, maybe frustrating outcome, just pause for a second.
Hmm.
Ask yourself, is there a game being played here? What might be the hidden hook? What's the real payoff someone's aiming for?
And maybe the bigger questions, what games are you playing, perhaps without even realizing it? What could you gain by choosing to stop? And what might you discover, what surprising bits of autonomy or real intimacy might emerge if you stepped outside those familiar patterns? It's about noticing where the real payoff lies in our everyday lives.